Welcome to Beneath the Branches, the podcast for the Adoption and Foster Care Clinic where we sit in the shade of shared experience. The heart is normalized and belonging is built one honest conversation at a time. Adoption, foster care, or kinship placement brings deep joy and real challenges, and we're here to talk about all of it. The hard, the heartwarming, and everything in between. So grab a cup of coffee, take a deep breath, and join us as we hold space for the messy, beautiful work of building connection beneath the branches.
Welcome back to the Adoption and Foster Care Clinic podcast. I'm Dr. Chambers, and I'm here with my friends Kelly and Caitlin, our therapists here at the Adoption and Foster Care Clinic. Today we're going to talk about testing, school testing, and accommodations. This is a timely podcast because we've just all gotten back from spring break and kids are dreading going back to school and dreading being tested with standardized testing and whatnot. So we thought we would talk a little bit about that, how to ease that, why the stress is there, and how to ease that stress. So do your kids have testing coming up?
They do, yes. Some start this week and then some next week.
Okay, yeah. So standardized testing can be a stressful season for anyone, but especially our kids. I just want to hear kind of your thoughts on why is it more stressful? I mean, you guys have the benefit of being adoptees yourself, and what was your experience with standardized testing and school testing and things like that? And why do you think it was more stressful or not more stressful for you guys?
I did not have the words for it as a kid, but I know now as an adult that I was not a good test taker. And my MO, which will not surprise y'all, is Christmas trees all the way down the Scantron. What cool design could I make? Because it required too much focus to read and then answer something intelligently. So it was much more fun for me to just make a cool design on the Scantron and let it be whatever it be. I had no investment in the outcome of the test, and so instead of being stressed, I just made it fun for myself. So I failed all of them, which was in the end really that was harmful because it created a belief in myself as a young child that I was stupid, and that school wasn't for me, and that was a whole nother beast. Not having the words to describe what I was experiencing and not having support in the classroom for learning made me just think that I wasn't a good academic or I wasn't a good student. And so I felt really dumb, which led to me seeking out lots of other things to entertain myself in school, which wasn't great. But when I think specifically about standardized testing, Christmas trees is the first thing that comes to mind. Yeah.
How about you, Kelly?
I think, looking back, I was a perfectionistic student. And so, I think that that was hard at times, but was also for me, more exciting at times. What's interesting is when I think back on standardized testing, I remember most filling in the demographics of the standardized testing first, and just the lack of racial and ethnic categories there were for me to bubble in. That's when I think about standardized testing, that is what was most difficult for me during that time.
So would it just say Asian? Was there an Asian category?
I think it was more like a Pacific Islander category.
Okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Even if we can highlight briefly that the reality that the two of us would not have been friends in an academic setting has never been more apparent when we talk about our different approaches to school, the perfectionists and
the
whatever.
Christmas tree.
Yeah, the Christmas tree, whatever you want to call it.
So let's unpack that. Perfectionism. We can start with that one because that's usually covering up some anxiety.
Yeah.
And why do our kids struggle with anxiety more in school, and how does that look on a day-to-day basis?
And for whatever reason, just in my counseling practice, like I work with the most perfectionistic kiddos. That's kind of become like a little specialty of mine because so many of the kids I see kind of deal with the same. And then, I think some of it stems from obviously anxiety, anxiety and the feeling of like wanting to be good enough, like wanting to match that perception of whatever they feel like is good enough, which honestly, I think parents are doing such a great job these days because I can't remember the last time I had a client come in that said, oh no, like I need to meet my parents' expectations about school. It's all this like self-induced like perfectionism that is coming out. Like it's not like so many of my clients will say, no, my parents don't care what I make. They just want me to do my best. And if my best is, if that's a C, that's fine. If that's a D, that's fine. As long as I'm trying to do my best. Or they'll say, like, my parents care nothing about grades. Like, they don't even really ask me to see, like, my report card. It's all about me. And so many of my clients are like, no, I have to make a 98 or a 99 on my report card for it to be good. It's not even an A, it's a 98 or 99. And I think that goes so much back to kind of self-worth. And even for myself, I realized that. So whenever I got out of college and I was no longer chasing like perfectionism and grades, like I was lost a little bit, because that's so much of like where my identity came from. And I think that is where our kids are now too. A lot of them is just chasing that expectation that they've set for themselves. And I think again, it comes from insecurity and lack of self-worth and anxiety.
Did you get any stereotypes being Asian
about,
my goodness. Being smart and you
Yes.
shouldn't be good at math and you should be
Yes. And that was so hard because I was a good student and I made good grades, but not because I was naturally great at math. It was because I worked my butt off, Like I really... school did not come super easy for me. So every A that I got was because like I was working my butt off to get it. But so often, like I remember this in elementary school too, you walk into a class and a teacher automatically thinks like you're smart, you're going to make A's. And so I think that played into like my perfectionistic tendencies too, is wanting to live up to that, even though like that wasn't my natural lean is to make all A's or to be good in math. I'm horrible at math, So part of that perfectionism came from that, like those like I guess what I'm trying to say unintended expectations that teachers have for you.
And I think with Caitlin, I think what's interesting with yours is you were school became traumatic for you, it sounds like.
Yes,
because of that school not doing as well as you thought you could in school. How did that affect and what kind of trauma did that bring to you?
Oh my gosh. So I didn't even realize, like I don't think I had all the words for it until I became a parent and I was going to student teacher meetings for my own kids and crying. And so I'd be sitting there and the teacher would be talking about my kid, like positive feedback, negative, like it was never just like this was just a standard parent-teacher check-in. And they've mostly all been good for my kids, like in regards to how they're doing in class, their friends. And I would find myself like crying through those meetings. And then I'd have to send emails later on and apologize to the teacher who's probably like, why is this lady so unhinged? But I realized that like being in the academic school environment was triggering so much of my self-worth and it feeling like an environment that was set up for me to fail in. And so I didn't even know how that like continued to affect me until being a parent. But as a kid, I found things that I liked. Like I loved broadcast journalism. That was great. But I just had I had the opposite of Kelly. I had no expectations of myself. I just hoped I graduated and I almost didn't. And again, like that created a belief in me that I was dumb, that I was stupid. And which was just hard, like, so if I'm not an academic at school, if I'm not good at learning, what do I do? What's my role? And that was like having as much fun and making as much trouble as I could, which wasn't great. I put myself in a lot of situations as a young person that could have ended really badly, that didn't, thankfully. But that was just lack of support, And I think there's been such a good culture change around identifying and accommodating kids who have needs. And I was diagnosed with ADHD, but it wasn't until high school, and it was almost too late at that point. And there were not very many medication options. And so I was either having the time of my life, you know, presumably, or I was like on meds and totally zonked. And I was not going to do that at that point. That was terrible. So I just continued to flounder. But now I look back and think about how important early diagnosis is for kids who have something like ADHD or some sort of learning need for them to be able to gain the support early on to help establish themselves as somebody who can be successful in school.
I think that's why one of my favorite things about working as a team here is that I feel like we can more clearly diagnose children. You know, like it would be hard for me now to go back into regular pediatrics where I've just got a short amount of time and I don't have a whole team before I make a diagnosis of ADHD or before I make a diagnosis of learning differences or autism or things like that. It's just so comforting to have you guys and Amy, our developmental specialist, just to help with those diagnoses and to help create accommodations for kids. And that's been very rewarding, like just to get those calls of like, hey, my kid's not doing well. Okay, well, look, come on in. We can look for some diagnoses that may not have been uncovered, and let's try to work with your school of creating accommodations. So that's been a great part of being together. So like in your case, or yours, Kelly, how could your parents have known, or the school known, that that you needed some type of accommodation or you needed further diagnosis at that time?
Mine's probably more obvious, and this is I feel like I have to say this for my family.
Yeah.
So, you know, like when I was in school, there was not as much curiosity around behavior and support. So when I look back, I don't have the lens of my parents should have seen X, Y, and Z. They just didn't know to look for that stuff. Schools, institutions were not set up at that point. So, but if I were myself in today's day and age, you know, what are the things? And I think for me, failing classes, you know, like that is like a big, kids should not be failing. You know, that is clear that something is not working for them at school. Behavior, you know, like that is the biggest sign. Like a kid who verbalizes not liking school or a kid who is struggling socially to find their place, and that can be shown in so many ways, but, you know, being withdrawn, I don't know, I'm trying to think.
Well, I think of the reasons people call us. You know, they call it, it is what you just said, school failure or struggles or behavior dysregulation.
Yeah, getting in trouble.
Getting
you know,
in trouble
like,
at school.
Yes. Even for like not being able to sit still or not like huge behaviors, which it can be huge behaviors, but it can just be like not being able to exist in the classroom as a typical child does, being very disorganized. You know, like we talk about the ADHD backpack, you know, like what it looks like. We have a term for that now. We didn't have that back in the 90s when I was in school, but I very much had that, you know, like paper, snacks, you know, disorganization. Like there's just so many things that, forgetting things, you know, like, oh, I forgot I have a project due tomorrow, you know, just all these little things. It's like, are other kids able to remember, keep track up with, and, you know, hold on to their responsibilities throughout the week? And if the answer is yes, and for your kid it's no, then something is not working for them. We need to be curious and figure out what it is.
And I think the other thing that we can watch out for too goes back to like somatic complaints. Like a lot of our kids will have stomach aches or headaches either before school, after school. And so that's something that we as parents just need to be curious about.
You know, when you think of somatic complaints, you do think about a child who's possibly been masking all day long, the sneaky struggler, you know, who's struggling, but we really just don't see that in grades or in daytime behaviors. Tell us a little bit more about that and what that did to you on the inside. And for parents, I think a really important thing, because again, sneaky strugglers, like it's really hard to kind of keep your thumb on it. And so as parents, I think you have to really remain curious. You know, you have to be like really attuned to your kid, because even the most attuned parents will miss it because again, like we mask so well. I feel like generally though, for
like someone who's masking, there's going to be something that pops up, whether it is a somatic complaint, whether it is like being a little withdrawn, or like social struggles, and then just like asking questions. Like, so for me, I remember at a very, very early age, like first grade, second grade, whenever you kind of do the read alouds in class, like I remember counting the people in front of me and rehearsing my part before I read it aloud, you know? Like just little things like that that we do for us. It takes so much like mental and emotional, I mean, it's just exhausting, you know, to go through that. So for a kid who's doing that all day, generally, again, like parents will see something, I think, fall out from that. And you just have to, it may be like super discreet, but you just have to like be really curious. You have to like be in the school. Like that's one thing that I try to do with my kiddos is like, I try to be in the school as much as I can so I can see things, you know, so I can see my kid, how they're relating to peers. Like, are they like standing back and like just watching? Are they being hypervigilant? Are they like in there and like talking to peers? I talk to teachers a whole lot. I think that's really important, you know, like being known by teachers at the school, by administrators, by the counselor, because they see your kid every day. You don't get that opportunity. And so like just being in it and like having those open lines of communication, both with the school and your kid, I think is really important, especially for the sneaky struggler.
Yeah. And I'm parenting a sneaky struggler. She didn't get diagnosed with ADHD until 5th grade. And that was like, we saw her grades plummet. And it was just kind of like this eye-opening experience for me and her dad of just like, oh man, she's been masking a whole lot at school. I think too, like rigidity is one thing that popped up for her, like just being pretty rigid about how things needed to look. And that was just a coping mechanism for, you know, she was trying to control her anxiety and ADHD she was experiencing. And then also like hearing her verbalize worries of like things that she doesn't need to be worried about, you know, that like we have, you know, like we've got it, we're going to have that covered. A big thing is she will say, I feel like I'm missing something. And that's, you know, so just listening to those things for a moment. I think sometimes as parents, we can be prone to just alleviate the discomfort for our child and be like, no, you're fine. You know, it's okay, there's nothing. But pausing in those moments when you kind of get that little like, and just leaning in and being curious with them about what's going on, what's beneath that, what do you think you could be missing, you know, like, and kind of walking back with them some.
And then I think too, like looking at discrepancies, like I talked a little bit about like being attuned to your kid, being curious with your kid and the school. So listen to discrepancies in the stories that you're getting. Like, is the school saying like, oh no, she's great, like she's really social, but is your kid coming home and saying, I didn't have anybody to play with today, or no one likes me, then that's a sign too, like when there's a discrepancy in what you're hearing from the school and your kid. And the other thing, I know that I think your household has dealt with this too, but like how do Sundays go? Like are Sundays really, really, really hard? Is that really difficult? Do we have sleep struggles on Sunday nights that aren't generally there at other times? Because that's a sign that your kid is like, could be struggling either like in a sneaky way or really overtly at school.
Yeah.
I hear a lot too. What makes a phrase that makes me think there's something underlying is my kid is lazy. Because kids are just naturally not lazy.
Right.
Usually there's something underneath that that's causing them to underperform. And the numbers are high with our kids. I mean, we don't really know the true number of how many of our children struggle with something like memory problems, executive functioning, ADHD, learning disabilities. We don't know the true number, but it's definitely closer to the 60-75% range just because of childhood developmental trauma. Caitlin, you have a great example that you tell about the rock in the mirror. Share that.
So I always tell my families that if you could imagine a mirror and it represents your child's development, and then you take a rock and the rock represents this moment of trauma, early life trauma, and you drop it on the mirror and the mirror splinters. And that is kind of what happens with our kids' development when they have this early life trauma. It is all over the place. It's very chaotic. And so oftentimes trauma can look, the impact trauma has on development can look like ADHD. And it can kind of have kids all over the place where in some areas they may totally excel and be above their age level peers. And in other areas they may be way below. And that is a part of I think adoptive parents need to expect as they parent their child, there's going to be some discrepancies, some challenges in their development because of that early life trauma.
I like that visual, definitely. And so, I mean, I think we've talked about one of the ways we can help them is through diagnosis and then getting them accommodations, which is a pretty long process, honestly. Like even when we have everyone here working on it, a child may take us 3 or 4 hours to have in the clinic and test. Everyone tests that child and everyone see that child before we're able to create some sort of plan and diagnosis for that child. What are other things that parents can do, though? What are other things they can do on a day-to-day basis? Say it is like standardized testing week. Woohoo! You know, how can we prep as parents going into that week?
Yeah, I mean, if you know you have an anxious test taker ahead, if you already know it's going to be a rough week for your kid, and usually they are groaning about test taking, you know. But if you particularly are dealing with a child who's very anxious about testing, reach out to your teacher, test administrator ahead of time, get an idea of what testing days are going to look like. So you can mentally prepare your kiddo, like, hey, when you go in today, you're going to have a 2-hour block of testing. It's going to feel really terrible. But when you get done, you guys have recess. You know, like just kind of helping set them up for what the days are going to look like. If your child already has accommodations, knowing like what the test is going to look like and being able to ask the teacher, okay, how are my child's accommodations being provided for during this test? I mean, those are some things that jump off the page right away. I know too, like I always tell parents, keep your asks low the week of your kid, the week of testing. Like they need a total pass from chores, from other hard things, because our kids are typically masking to some level socially anyway. And it feels even stronger during test taking because the environment is so much more controlled and rigid. And so they are going to get home and just be totally exhausted, even more than they are in a typical day. So them having the energy or ability to follow through with just tasks and chores is going to be a battle that you don't want to fight that week.
Yeah. And then, like, really practical things, you know, like try to make sure that your kid is going to bed on time, getting good sleep. And that may mean making more accommodations for them around bedtime than you generally do. Like, for a really anxious kid, that may mean close sleeping during test times. And same with like making sure like nutrition is provided, you know, like that they have a good breakfast. Even better if you can pack the protein in for breakfast. Other things that we look out for or that we really try to do is, I just lost my train of thought. Cut.
Well, so like when they come home, sensory breaks or like having a plan. So they can regulate.
Another thing that we look out for to really try to do is when they get home from school, like Caitlin was saying, like really low expectations and having like things that they can do that really like feeds the body's sensory needs. And even better, my kid's school generally does this, and I'm like, thank you teachers, is when they don't give homework, the testing days. I think a lot of schools are moving towards that, but even not, for me as a mom, I'm like, it's okay to not get your homework done this day, because like they're collapsing already, you know, like they've been masking or they've really been like using all they can, all they have to do well in those tests. Like, let's take homework off the table. That is not important on testing days, you know. And then like again, like expect collapse after school. Like expect like you said, keep expectations low. Like your kids may be more disrespectful, you know, they may have a lower window of tolerance, you know, they may be grumpy or grouchy. Like just make some accommodations for them after school that maybe you wouldn't typically make.
Like, as that would be maybe extracurricular activities.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
maybe cutting those out
Yeah.
that week if possible, or if they really enjoy it.
Yeah.
You know, make sure they go.
Yeah, right. Depending on the kid.
Looking at extracurricular activities or play dates or visits with extended family.
Yeah.
Kind of looking at it through the lens of standardized testing week.
Right. And I mean, again, we talked about screen time a little bit in a previous episode, but that may be time where you let your kid have some screen time after school so that they can like not use their brains in the same way that they've been using them all day, you know. Just being willing as a parent, you know, we ask the schools to make so many accommodations, like being willing as a parent to make some of those accommodations yourself too.
Exactly. Or physical touch, even.
Yeah.
You know, some kids may require more physical touch, so you may have to be more available.
Or less physical touch.
Yeah. It's like first week of kindergarten, exhausting. Like that's what you should expect, you know, like that level of exhaustion where they're just falling apart.
Because the schedule's different too.
Yeah.
And our kids feed on a good, you know, on consistency to keep that anxiety at bay. Definitely. When is a good time to get accommodations? That's one thing that I, you know, I've struggled with. Like, you know, you don't want your kid to be singled out and be different at certain ages because they just really don't want to go to the resource room and be away from their peers. But then there comes a time where it is super important for them to have accommodations. How do we balance that?
It's so hard. I think there's so many factors you have to take into account when you're looking at that. Social impact for sure, and then just like classroom success. Kind of like that in my story, like, are they identifying themselves as stupid or dumb? Like, is this child starting to feel dumb? Because if they are, that's dangerous, you know, like, because again, when you show up in the world as I'm dumb, that's the choices you make for yourself are not great. And so I think you have to at some point value how they're identifying the worth and value they see in themselves over the social implications. And hopefully you have a school and a teacher who will partner with you and be sensitive to like social implications, what it looks like, and advocating for those things. That is a part of the discussion you have when you start with your 504. You know, I would like accommodations to look like this. Let's do the least amount of intervention possible at first to see how that moves the needle and increase from there. Let's not start with immediately pulling them out, you know, and just kind of partnering with your school to help find that balance. And talking to your kid too. Kids are pretty, they're good experts on their experience, you know, and letting them share, like, this creates a lot of insecurity for me. This feels more comfortable, and trying to work with them to find the middle ground too.
And I've seen, again, just from like personal experience and then experience with my clients, typically I feel like the younger you can put something in place, the better. Because kids are more tolerant. You know, other kids are more tolerant when they're younger. As they get older, some of those things, some of the social implications become more apparent. And so from what I've seen, kind of the younger tends to be the better, you know. And then just as far as, I don't know what you guys recommend or what you guys have done, but I always recommend, like, especially when you're jumping into it, don't do it in September, you know, like don't start in August and then have those meetings right in September. Like, give your kid, the teacher, a couple of months to really know your kid before you start like scheduling these meetings and looking at accommodations. So I always say, like, you know, wait until, you know, end of October, November, if you can, and start having some of those meetings.
Yeah, you want them to have data on your kid, you know, to be able to say, this is how I see them excel or struggle in these different environments.
One thing we learned, and I think I'm enjoying even more, is our old patients coming back as they're starting to launch. Like, they're thinking they're 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, and maybe they've skated under the radar, but college is coming, or and you know, and so they're trying to launch, and so accommodations do become more important at that time, and you do have to have, if you want to get accommodations in college, or accommodations, say, on the ACT or the SAT, you've got to be able to prove that you've had those accommodations already. So starting early is really important for those bigger tests that are possibly going to determine scholarships or entrance into a college exam. You really can't wait till the last minute on those. You really need to start at least by 9th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, getting those accommodations in place so that you can have the necessary accommodations for anxiety or ADHD, whether it be time and a half, or being able to be in a room alone or separate from other people to take those big tests. It's super important to get that in place early, and then that carries over then naturally to college. So it makes it easier to get your college accommodations. And I have learned college accommodations are way better than, than the high school ones. I mean, it's like a whole other ball game. It's been really fun to see the support that a lot of college campuses have for the kids.
Nice.
Great.
That's great.
We should discuss what some of these accommodations are. what are some of the signals that teachers see? Because teachers are on the front line. They're the ones that are able to give us a lot of feedback that we can't or don't get on a regular basis on our kids, because they may act differently at home than they do in the learning environment. So what are some of the accommodations that you guys have seen that teachers have done that have been super helpful for our kids?
I know chunking's a big one,
that's so big,
or just like being able to have blank sticky notes to cover up portions of the test so a child only sees one problem at a time. And the great thing about that one that I like is it can be very student-led. Like a teacher doesn't have to come over and give them a special test or arrange it for them. They just have their little sticky notes and they cover up what they need to cover up, and they, take their test. Move things that provide for movement, so like exercise band around the legs of the chair, wobble seats. A lot of classes now don't have traditional desks in elementary, which I love, and then kids have a lot of options for the type of sensory feedback they can get from their seat, which helps regulate the body. But those are two that always hit me like right when I think about classroom accommodations.
Yeah, and personally, one thing that has helped a whole lot is self-regulated water and bathroom breaks, because, and just watching a kid, like, and this was discovered just through, like, really attuned counselors and really attuned teachers, like, they just noticed that, generally a kid knows, like, when their body needs something, and so they would notice, like, a kid, like, getting up and, like, the example they gave me is like when they were doing a coloring sheet, like this kid would get up and walk and grab one crayon at a time and come back and color, and then go put that one crayon back and grab another instead of like 5 or 6 crayons at one time. And that was that kid's way of like getting their body needs met, like getting their sensory needs met. And so, like having self-regulated water and bathroom breaks. So the kid is in charge of their bodies. The kid knows like, oh, hey, I'm overwhelmed, I need a break, I'm overstimulated, I'm gonna go to the restroom, or I'm going to go get some more water. That's been really helpful for a lot of the kids that I've seen.
And this is like an older elementary kid can regulate this better, but having those noise reducing ear pods for like when they're taking tests, that's really good. I know like it can be really dysregulating for a kid who's struggling to see and watch other students getting up and turning their work in. And sometimes those students will either be like, I'm done, and it's so hard to focus and your anxiety starts to increase. So those have been really helpful.
Yeah, there's several different kinds. The loop, and then there's calm, flare. And every kid's different which one they like the better. A lot of them don't like the headphones that you think of when you're trying to block out noise.
The more discreet the better. And those they fit in your pocket, they can keep them on their person at any time.
And allowing quiet fidgets has been a big one that schools have opened up to a lot more now. So that's really, really helpful to be able to have a fidget that's quiet and non-distracting.
And in some schools, not everyone will accommodate this accommodation, but allowing kids to have gum.
I was about to say, I know what you're about to say. Gum is a great one.
It's like magic, for a lot of our kids, so for a school that, and sometimes we've been more successful when that kiddo is already being pulled out for testing, so that's already like a limited number of students in the room. But gum can be so helpful for our kids when they're taking
And there's
tests.
a type of gum too.
Oh, it's got to be the nasty, like big, chunky, double bubble.
Hard to chew, where you really got to work at it.
The real sweet, bad for your teeth. But great for testing.
Yes,
But of course, extra time on tests.
Yes.
Being able to not have to take the test in the classroom with everyone else if you get distracted or anxious with test taking. I mean, some of our kids need the test to be read out loud to them. So maybe they have learning differences, and so having the test read out to them is much more helpful and much more equivalent to what the other kids are experiencing.
And getting to sometimes paper versions of computer tests has been helpful. Like so much of the testing, even in elementary that's done, is done through the computer. And that can be really dysregulating for a lot of our kids. And so being able to request those things in paper format has been helpful.
I think too, the way schools talk about it is really important. The way parents talk about it is really important. There's some kids who will come in and they're like terrified of failing. If they don't do well on this test, like they have it in their mind, whether it's because, you know, the school's saying this or a parent's saying this or because it's what they've made up. But the story that they've taken in is, I'm going to fail the 4th grade if I do not pass that test, you know, and that is not helpful for anybody. So I think the way that the school and the parents frame test taking is really, really important too.
Yes, that is so true.
Yeah. Another one I thought of was seating location.
Yep.
You know, some kids do better in the back and some people do better in the front. And some kids do better near the window and the others near the teacher.
Right.
So seating in the classroom can be helpful.
So I think for parents who may be listening to this, it's really important to note, like today we just barely scratched the surface of accommodations and everything that our kids need. So I would just encourage people to like reach out to us. Like this is something that we do all the time, and we do in a very individualized way based on your family, your child's school's needs. So if we can be helpful in, you know, taking the pressure off of test taking or coming up with accommodations for your kiddo, reach out. We would love to support you guys in this way.
Thank you for joining the Adoption and Foster Care Clinic for another episode of Beneath the Branches, a podcast for adoptive, foster, and kinship care families. We are deeply grateful to our sponsor, Show Hope, for their generous support and their continued work to break down barriers to adoption and support families every step of the way. Until next time, may you feel covered, connected, and never alone beneath the branches.